were never meant to be legends. They were never asked if they wanted to be remembered. They were pulled from pain, molded by tragedy, sculpted into icons by hands that never touched their hearts. The world saw symbols, but behind the colors, there was only silence. Beneath the armor, behind the shields, inside the shattered pasts they tried to hide, lived people who never chose the burden they carried. Some were scientists, some were spies. Some were just children when the world demanded sacrifice. None of them were ready, and none of them were free. They called them Earth's mightiest, but might was all they were allowed to show. Vulnerability was off limits. Humanity was inconvenient. Emotions had to be buried beneath the mission, and grief had to be swallowed before the next headline hit the airwaves. They weren't heroes. They were headlines. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't save them, it used them. The governments didn't fund them. They filed them away like assets. The media didn't praise them. It projected them. Built illusions tall enough to cast shadows over truth. And the truth is, these weren't saviors. These were survivors of a world that bent them into blades. They never asked to fight gods, or aliens, or armies. They never asked to be the wall between peace and annihilation. They just wanted meaning. But meaning became war, and war became identity. And now, even in peace, they don't know who they are without the fight. In this video, we're going to dismantle the myth of the Avengers. Not to dishonor them, but to finally see them clearly. To understand how S.H.I.E.L.D., politics, and pain turned these people into weapons. And to ask the question no one ever dared to voice. What if they were never heroes at all? They called them heroes before they ever earned the word. They dressed them in colors, gave them symbols, told the world they stood for justice. But behind the curtain, they were never just defenders. They were products, projects, precision-forged tools. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't find heroes. It found leverage and turned it into legend. Tony Stark was not a savior. He was a merchant of destruction, rebranded with guilt. His arc reactor didn't just power a suit. It powered the illusion that a war profiteer could become a guardian. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't stop him. They steered him. They weaponized his intellect, his ego, his need to control what he once sold to the highest bidder. Steve Rogers wasn't chosen for his heart. He was chosen because he could follow orders and die doing it. Project Rebirth didn't need a man. It needed a symbol, a story, a soldier who would fight their wars with a smile. They froze him in time, only to thaw him when the world needed another icon to rally behind. Not a man, a banner. Natasha Romanoff didn't escape her past. She was traded from one master to another. The Red Room made her a ghost. S.H.I.E.L.D. gave her a badge, but neither gave her peace. Every mission was a penance. Every killer reminder she was built for precision, not mercy. Redemption was just another assignment. And what of Hawkeye, the man with a bow in a world of gods? They used him because he was invisible, because he would never question the orders, because his silence was loyalty. He wasn't an Avenger because he believed in something greater. He was chosen because he was already willing to disappear for it. They called it initiative, but it was containment. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't assemble the Avengers to protect the world. They did it to control it, to have something on standby for when things got out of hand. Not heroes. Emergency protocols with a human face. Banner was never recruited. He was tracked. Watched like a ticking bomb. His intelligence was tolerated, but never trusted. The moment he slipped, they planned to put him down like an experiment gone wrong. They didn't want to cure the Hulk. They wanted to harness him, unleash him, and bury him if necessary. Thor wasn't part of their plan. He was a variable. A god who answered to no chain of command. But even he became part of the pattern. They studied him, manipulated his guilt, made him choose their fights out of shame. He wasn't asked to protect Earth. He was reminded of what he'd let happen if he didn't. They smiled for the cameras, but suffered in silence. Each of them carried pain that was never healed. Scars, not just of battle, but of identity. They didn't know who they were outside the mission, because they were never allowed to be anyone else. Wanda lost everything. Her family, her brother, her home. And instead of healing, they handed her a role, a suit, a battlefield. She wasn't ready, she wasn't stable. But they used her anyway, because a power like hers could not be left to grieve. Vision never chose to be born. He was made in the shadow of war, pieced together from scraps of genius and fear. He tried to understand humanity, to love it, but he was never given time. He was deployed like a drone with a conscience. Sacrificed without ceremony. Peter Parker looked up to them, idolized them, and in return he was pulled into a war he didn't understand, given tech he didn't ask for, burdened with consequences he wasn't ready to bear. His youth wasn't protected. It was weaponized. Even those who survived never really lived. Retirement didn't come with peace. It came with nightmares, regret, isolation. Because when you are forged for war, peace is a language you no longer speak. And yet, despite it all, there was something extraordinary about them. not because they were heroes, but because they endured, bent without breaking. They were forged in fire and still chose to shield others from the flames. Tony built armor to keep the world away, but in the end, he gave it all for a daughter, for a friend, for a chance to be more than the man he used to be. He didn't just change, he chose to change. That choice mattered. Steve woke up in a world he didn't recognize, but he still led, still believed in something greater than himself. He rejected blind orders, broke the rules to protect those he loved. He wasn't Captain America because of the serum. He was because of the stand he took when it mattered most. Wanda broke, and from the wreckage she rose. Not perfect, not saintly, but honest. Her grief became strength, her tragedy a warning. Her story one of chaos and love intertwined. Even those who fell left echoes behind. Legacies written in sacrifice, in stubborn hope, in the quiet refusal to be what the world demanded. Not weapons, not soldiers, just people, trying to be something more. Maybe they were never meant to be heroes. Maybe that's what made them matter. They didn't wear capes to be worshipped. They wore them because they were trying to be better than the world that broke them. The world didn't deserve their protection, but they gave it anyway, even when it cost them everything. Even when it meant dying in the dirt for strangers who would never know their names. That wasn't duty. That was choice. Their strength wasn't in their powers. It was in their persistence, in the way they kept showing up, kept rebuilding after each fall, kept believing in people who often didn't believe in them. Hope didn't come from above. It came from within. They didn't fit into the system. They broke it. They questioned orders, walked away from authority, started over again and again, because they knew that justice without heart was just another kind of oppression. And maybe that's why their stories still matter, because they remind us that even the broken can stand tall. Even the wounded can protect others. Even weapons can learn to choose peace. But let's not rewrite the myth. Let's not forget how it all began. These weren't champions sculpted by destiny. They were sharpened by conflict, hardened by oversight, directed by fear disguised as strategy. Every victory came with casualties. Every battle left something behind. A city reduced to rubble. A friend buried beneath silence. A choice that could never be undone. The world called them saviors. But salvation always had a cost. They were not built to heal. They were built to strike, to act fast, to eliminate threats, and sometimes that meant becoming the very threat they were meant to stop. Not because they wanted to, but because the world demanded it. So call them what you will, heroes, Avengers, protectors of Earth, but understand the truth that shadows every mission. They were never just fighting for us. They were fighting the roles forced upon them, the stories written without their consent. And in the end, that's the tragedy. That the ones who bled for peace were forged in violence. That the ones who saved the world were never allowed to save themselves. That maybe, just maybe, they were weapons pretending to be men, and no one ever asked if they wanted to be anything else.